Hello, you're watching Razzmatazz with Rashi, and today we have with us Richa S Mukherhjee. She's an award winning author, a poet, an ex journalist, and today she is with her new book, The Curse of Kuldhara. So, in this episode, we'll get to know a lot more about Richa, her books, and her life. So, welcome, Richa. How are you?
Thank you. Yes, it's good. I love this part of the year. It's festive.
Yeah.
And, every day there's a lot of drums. And essentially, even if you don't feel like it, you have to
Yeah.
dance to something or the other. So, yes. And I've had my new book come out during the auspicious time. And currently, I'm getting the word out and enjoying every bit of what I'm doing.
Yes. So before we move forward, I'd like to tell the audience that we'll end this episode with a question. And if you give the correct answer in the comments below, you can be one of the lucky winners at the end of the season. Also, this
Oh, wow.
contest is only for the subscribers, so don't forget to subscribe before you participate. So, yes, Richa, tell our audience something about yourself and all the wonderful things that you're doing.
Well, Rashi, we've been acquainted for a while and we've
Yes.
chatted before as well on your wonderful show. So
Yeah.
you already know that I am a bit of an accidental writer. And it was a very fortuitous and amazing accident. And I wouldn't have it any other way. I've always, sort of meandered in terms of what I've studied and what I've, the fields I've worked in. I was a journalist. I was in advertising for the longest time. And somehow books happened during my maternity break. And I enjoyed the process so much that I don't think I ever looked back. I was looking back, and especially being women who are constantly second guessing and thinking about everybody around us, and how things are going to happen. If you're invested in something else, what will happen if I leave a job? So all of the conundrums continued. But because I enjoyed writing the first book, which was a book about accidental pregnancy called "I Didn't Expect to Be Expecting," so I think it was so unencumbered and such a wonderful sort of release for me. Very unstructured and very horribly written, might I add, which my editors told me later, saying that I sent them a book which was 200,000 words long. But they were very tolerant because I think they understood that there is something interesting in my writing style and, how I fuse humor in everyday situations. So that's how it happened. Then I realized that I wanted to introduce humor in not just everyday situations, but, when people are being murdered as well. So I went ahead and wrote a thriller called Kanpur Khufia Private Limited. And my third book was Excess Baggage, which was a story of, a mother and daughter. And, this is something, Rashi, that I've always felt that it is true for most writers that, there is a lot more in you as opposed to, the kind of genre that you're having to write or you stick to. For whatever reason, there are concerns in terms of creating a brand for yourself, and we all tend to write, so which is why blogs, which is one of the reasons I got in touch with you, also is such a wonderful platform, is because it lets you not essentially just think about your audience, but it is a release for all the kind of nonsensical experiences or thoughts that you go through, which is not engineered for a certain kind of audience, or which is not processed. It is an undistilled expression of what you feel. And when you're writing books, you have to be careful of the fact that you're creating a brand for yourself. So I knew I had a sort of writing style, which is the uniform factor in all the books and all the topics that I wrote about. But like I said, after I wrote the thriller, the humorous thriller, I realized that, there's this interesting story about a mother and daughter and about, unaddressed emotional baggage, which, gets deposited in various corners and crevices of our heart. So at that point in time, I felt that's how excess baggage happened. And then, well, I guess my love for the thriller genre and the paranormal again came back to me through the Kanpur Khufia franchise. And I've always been obsessed with ruins. There's something so mystical and wonderful about ruins. And I remember, I read about it, about Kuldhara, and I always wondered, that's the wonderful part. Whenever you see something from the past,
Yeah.
from, pages of history. It's open to interpretation.
Yeah.
And there is something so visceral about standing in a place, which has experienced not just tumult, but, a lot of interesting history.
Yeah.
And
Hidden
then kind of,
stories.
yeah, and then interpreting it in your own way and then merging that into your,
Exactly.
fictional space. So I
Mm.
found that very interesting and challenging. And that's how, Curse of Kuldhara
Okay.
came about. But I must say,
Nice.
my father is still shocked in terms of how
Yeah.
I picked my topic, because from the first one, which he said was about an adulterous topic, because the cover had to a man and a woman under a blanket. And he said,
Okay. Yeah.
Pehle you wrote about that. And now you're writing about, Bhoot Pret. I'm like,
Murders,
no, it's
mysteries,
not
and
about
all.
Bhoot Pret. Yeah, it's about a few different things. But yeah, I mean, it's always about challenging yourself and keeping it interesting for yourself as a writer as well.
Yes.
So I'm glad I am, I
Definitely.
choose in this organic way.
So how do you write? Like, do you outline your story first, or you just let it flow? Like, what is your process?
Hmm, I've evolved with every book, Rashi. I think,
Mm.
because you spend about a year with a book, because it's not about how quick you
Mm.
write it. By the time that you have edited it and,
Yeah,
cursed
long
it a
process.
hundred times and rewritten large portions of it and finally send it to the editor and it finally is published, it takes about a year, sometimes even more.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost as if, every book is a sort of a classroom for me. Because when I
Mm.
started out, it was an autobiographical space,
Yeah.
which I was heavily borrowing from. That's what most, first time writers would do. And
Correct.
I did the very same. But, and sure enough, there was no structure.
Mm-hmm.
In between feeds and diaper changes, I would just write down a paragraph of
Yeah.
what I, would write in the second chapter. And that's how it happened.
Okay.
But as I've, with every book, I've realized the importance and the coherence that structure provides, to your story.
Yeah.
And especially because I was attempting two different genres and merging them into one. I was trying to create unease through a thriller, and then I was trying to give a little bit of relief with comedy.
Humor.
So if I did not understand the broad framework of where I was heading,
Mm-hmm.
forget about the mystery, I would lose, my own,
Exactly.
train of
The
thought
plot
along
won't
the way.
work.
Yes. So initially, there are many methods, if you read
Mm.
about it, which are interesting and people adopt different methods.
Yeah.
But it's a very individual process. And what worked for me
Exactly.
initially was, a broad beginning, middle, and end. Then I
Mm-hmm.
went ahead in terms of detailing out sections of the book, and to now, where in my last book, I've been able to detail out chapters as well.
Okay.
So I
Nice.
haven't gone the CSI Miami way, like how some
Yeah.
people write, where it looks like the back room of CSI Miami because there are chits and index cards, and I'm fascinated by that kind of
Okay.
writing, but I haven't reached there yet.
Yeah.
So what I do is, because I am an amalgamation of an intuitive writer plus a bit of a structured writer, so I provide
Mm-hmm.
myself a framework to
Mm-hmm.
give myself, some sort of a direction. And within
Yeah.
that, then of course, sometimes my characters change personalities, sometimes,
Yeah. While you're writing,
towards the
it
end
just flows.
completely
Yeah.
changes. But it's a sort of an evolving process. And
Mm-hmm.
it helps because
Yeah.
also, once I finished writing the book, Stephen King said that once you're done with the first draft, leave it for like 2-3 months. I can't do that because
Yeah.
I'm a very, antsy person, and I'll keep coming back to it. And I actually spend more time with my drafts than I do with the original work. So I
Okay.
go into about at least on an average 7 to 8 drafts,
Okay. Yeah.
and completely. And
Yeah.
each draft is from a different lens.
Mm-hmm.
So that really helps me as a
Yeah.
process. So and I don't think I can cut corners with that part of the process. So that is,
Okay.
drafts normally people think of when you're done with the entire book, but I
Yeah.
honestly
It's in
consider
the
that a
process.
very
Yeah.
integral part of my writing. Yeah. So that's pretty much how I
Nice.
approach it.
So, how do you think of your characters? Like, what elements do you think is important to create a very memorable character, like you have created for Prachand Tripathi or even Ammaji? I know that's inspired by your grandmother and great grandmother, and all those things comes into that. So, how do you give them a structure to your characters?
So it's a combination of what I observe,
Mm.
with people around me on a day-to-day basis, because we tend to soak up everything that's in our environment, whether it's news, whether it's, people we meet, interesting conversation. I'm always eavesdropping because I have like this really odd expression on my face every time, it's this wide-eyed look, which means that, my
You're
antennas are actually
thinking.
this way and I'm not focusing on somebody in front of me. So,
Yeah.
we're constantly soaking. In
Mm.
addition to that, when I'm thinking of characters, and I personally think that for me, before I get into the plotting and, the minutiae and all of that of, where the story goes and all of that, for me, I need to inhabit the world of the characters. And this is very cliched, but I don't go into too many details. But
Okay.
I need to know that the kind of character that I have in my mind needs to be sticky
Mm-hmm.
enough, whether
Yeah.
it's by virtue of names, whether it's by virtue of the backdrop that they come from and their history.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be a certain amount. Now, everybody tries that, right? You want your
Yeah.
characters to be sticky and unique. But somehow, I just feel that if I know this space and their history and their context well enough, I'll be able to nuance them and write them in a
Yeah.
very interesting way. So I do
Mm-hmm.
spend a lot of time on my characters, and I know
Yeah.
that the key ingredients are definitely names,
Yeah.
a little bit of research as well, for sure.
Yes.
So,
Research
everything
definitely.
can't be anecdotal. Like some of my characters have come from people I've met, people in my
Mm.
family or people that I come across. And I feign ignorance whenever they ask me, did I inspire this character? Always. That's the safe thing to do. But I also think that research plays, a very important role. So in getting the
Mm-hmm.
nuances and the history and the context
Correct.
right, for
Yeah.
sure. So that bit, the research bit is definitely important. But then
Mm.
when I'm writing the characters,
Yeah.
then I move away from all kinds of cliches and everything I've read and seen and heard, because
Mm-hmm.
that is what will contribute towards the uniqueness of the character. If
Yeah.
he ends up, if Prachand Tripathi ended up being like Byomkesh Bakshi or Arthur Conan Doyle or whatever, there
Mm.
are similarities in
Yeah.
terms of his process and his mental machinations. But in
Mm-hmm.
terms of him, he's not a blundering fool, nor is he a
Mm.
very city smart, a city slicker.
Yeah.
So somewhere in
It's
between,
different.
for me, yeah, everything is about moderation. So I feel that because life is made up of so many emotions, I imbue my characters with all those kind of different emotions. One person will be an
Mm-hmm.
extreme, somebody will be moderate, another person will be
Yeah.
somebody who's providing that inner voice. So it's like a
Mm-hmm.
combination of emotions and a combination of
Nice.
characteristics that I keep on sprinkling, and
Yeah.
of course giving them silly and funny names also seems to be my forte. And I need to I
How
always,
difficult it is
somebody
to
wrote to me.
finalize the names. Sometimes you just end up with your relatives or
Always.
friends' names, and it's it's a nightmare then.
Yeah, and so I've gotten so desperate now after naming, after 4 books and multiple characters. The last time I wanted to name an inspector, I went to my daughter and I said, Anita, what is your favorite name? Go for it. And she said, Maya. I said, done. Surname, she said, Gupta. It's my best friend's last name. I said, sure,
Mm.
Maya
Okay.
Gupta. That's how, so some you need to really think about. Like when I was
Yeah.
naming the dogs in excess baggage, one was called Mutton, one was called
Mm-hmm.
Bhindi, right? So, and this one, somebody I remember wrote into me saying that so Richa continues her streak of naming at least one character after food. So I looked at my book at Curse of Kuldhara. I looked at my husband. I said, "You've been through the book. Who have
Uh-huh.
I named after a vegetable or food or character?" And then I realized that there's this director, his eccentric director called Alok
Mhm.
Bhatnagar, whose dark name, or like a familiar short
Pet
name
name,
at
yeah.
home is Alu. Pet
Oh,
name is
great.
Alu. I said, oh,
Has
okay.
to
So
be
it
there.
happens inadvertently. Yeah. So it happens
Yeah.
inadvertently now, even if I don't plan it. So yeah, it's all about, keeping your readers guessing and making it interesting.
Yeah.
Something that you would find interesting yourself.
Mm. So give us some tips on your publishing journey. Like it has been a really a wonderful one, and there are people who are struggling to like send their pitch their stories to the publishers, and what should they keep in their mind, and how should they go about it?
Mm. So I guess things have worsened from the time we had a conversation last, Rashi. And we all know that, the pandemics played a number.
Yeah,
It
that
was
was
already
definitely.
very hard to publish in this industry.
Mm.
But it's gotten harder still, even for established authors, even for, authors who had a couple of books out, it's not easy anymore.
Mm.
So now that I've, rung the death knell and depressed everyone, I will just generally talk about the fact that just like writing is an individual process and there's no formulas that universally work, I think the
Mm.
same applies to publishing as well. I have
Okay.
seen a surge of, because see, everybody wants to publish traditionally. There is a
Yes.
charm, I will absolutely admit that, but you also have to be practical, and that's the first thing I would recommend to people who want to publish.
Mm-hmm.
Firstly, focus on your work and don't get overtly carried away with who your ideal reader is and who you're writing for. The
Mm-hmm.
uniqueness of your voice, the uniqueness of what you write comes from your unique lens on the world. And if you're
Yeah.
constantly thinking about who you're writing for, you're never going to be able to do a good job of
Mm.
that. So firstly,
Correct.
finish
That should
that job.
reflect in your writing.
And yeah, so that is where, you invest all your creativity. Once you're done,
Mm-hmm.
that is when you have to put your pragmatic hat on and stop being a dreamer. Because if you just sit in your chair and say, "Arey, mera kaam ho gaya here," publish it, it's not going to happen. So
Yeah.
that is when you really need to start off your research in terms of who are the publishers. And
Mm-hmm.
let's not be elitist about it, and let's not be stupid about it either. You have to list out every single publisher who you
Mm-hmm.
can reach out to, who's been publishing the books in the kind of genre that you're looking at.
Yeah.
And then in a staggered fashion, you have to reach out to them and be patient.
Mm-hmm.
I have seen a huge surge in self-published books as well, and there is
Yes, it
absolutely
is.
no stigma attached to that.
Correct.
There are very established authors, including Ravinder Singh, including Amish
Mm-hmm.
Tripathi, including Chitra B. Devakarni, who sometimes people write faster. It's either they have started with
Mm-hmm.
self-published books, or they come to a point where Neil De Silva, he's a very, he's
Yeah.
come on your show as well. He's a dear friend,
Yes.
and he has been published across across publishers. But
Correct.
because he writes faster, he
Yeah.
does self-publishing intermittently as well. So it
Mm-hmm.
purely depends on what works for you. Another thing people assume is that I have you definitely need an agent. I
Mm-hmm.
think agents are very, very essential in the process, but you need to find an agent who completely invests, is invested in your work.
Okay. Yeah.
And it might not be I would have said it differently maybe about a couple of years ago, because
Mm-hmm.
I personally don't have an agent, nor did I start off with that. There are just people now within the publishing world, who I've reached out to.
Mm-hmm.
And Ravinder is also my co-publisher,
Yeah.
Ravinder Singh. So by virtue of the publishers itself, I try and reach out. But given the fact that the plethora of submissions, the shrinking shelf space, it is not a bad idea in this day and age to approach to approach agents.
Agents.
There are some individual agents, like there's Siahi, run by
Mm-hmm.
Meera Kapoor. There's Kanish Gupta. So these are individual agents who either, if
Mm-hmm.
you like, they like your work, they'll take you on. Then there
Mm-hmm.
are others like the Book Bakers
Bookmakers.
Agency,
Yeah.
and there's other publicists such as Lipika Bhushan. So there's different sorts
Mm-hmm.
of people offering their services, and
Yeah.
you have to understand in entirety what is it that you're seeking. If for you it's
Mm-hmm.
just about a tick, let me just get my book out there,
Yeah.
and then I can also manage. If you're the kind of person who can, for example, I've seen the amount of investment of time that goes in blogs.
Yeah.
You put your blog out
Definitely.
there, then you're sitting and reading everyone's blogs, and then
Mm-hmm.
you have those books coming out, and then you're sitting and promoting them. So it depends on what you're out. If you're ready to invest that much time, then you
Mm-hmm.
can easily
You
self-publish.
can
You
go
can
for
go
it.
and create an audience for yourself,
Yeah.
and then you can go to a publisher. So that's done.
Mm-hmm.
I have like 40 examples of people who've done that. And
Yeah.
then publishers, you pitch to them, and then they'll know you have a bit of an audience, and then
Mm.
that's fine
And
as
that
well.
works.
Uh, that also works. So
Mm.
it purely depends on, if you want to get an agent, they help. But you have to be very, I guess, clear in terms of what you're pitching to them as well. There has to
Mm-hmm.
be a certain amount of research you put in, saying that this is why my book stands
Yeah.
apart. This is why my content is unique and special. This is why my voice is, different.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to do your research. You need to create a pitch for yourself, which is very
Yes.
interesting. And then, of course, there's book to screen adaptation options as well, wherein
Yeah.
nowadays it's very interesting and lucrative. But I would first say get a couple of books out of the way,
Mm-hmm.
because we are not Anand Nilakanthan and many other people who are so, I guess, seasoned that they can write
Mm.
directly for screen and all of that. If your
Yeah.
mainstay is books, I suggest, get a couple of
Focus on the
books
books
out
first.
of the way, experience that process
Yeah.
first. And then, of course, there's outfits like the Story Inc. And there are many production houses
Many.
as
Yeah.
well who directly contact you. So that comes a little later on in the ecosystem, as part of the
Mm-hmm.
ecosystem. Initially, it's about try everything and don't have a chip on the shoulder of, in terms of approaching people or self-publishing or anything.
Mm-hmm.
Anything that works, because this is
Yes.
a frenetic and chaotic stage for the market right now,
Yeah.
and you have to be realistic.
Yes. And it's a long process. And I think
Mm.
the writers are listening. So these are very good tips that's coming from somebody who has been through all those stages and experienced that. So what are your future plans now? Like what's keeping you busy?
Well, between dogs and children and the home, a lot. But yeah, I mean, I just keep myself happy I don't always want to be busy, Rashi, but I
Mm-hmm.
feel that when I'm constantly in the middle of a project is what keeps me happy, because that,
Yeah.
gives me some sort of an end goal. So I tend to distribute. I mean, I'm writing a lot of, varied things. I'm writing,
Mm.
I'm doing submissions for short stories. I have
Okay.
articles happening for publications, but
Mm.
constantly there's always a book in the background.
Yeah.
So I have incidentally finished writing the first draft of my fifth book, which
Okay,
is
that's nice.
languishing. Yeah, which is languishing, something I'm very excited about, because again, it's another new challenging topic and a different
Okay.
milieu of society that I've
Mm-hmm.
experimented with. So that is languishing, because right now I'm focusing on my promotions. So that's done. I
Yeah.
need to get back to that. I'm trying to work on some screenplays as well alongside, just to keep
Mm.
myself, I mean, you have to experience various
Yes,
kinds of
various
formats.
types. Yeah, definitely.
And I've been writing some concepts to screen as well. So
Nice.
just yeah, and some audio books, working on those as
Okay.
well. So it's
Yeah.
just about,
Lot
people
of
keep
things.
saying that yeah, just, people just keep saying that, Array, we have a penchant for prophesizing na ki, Array, books are dead and all. Nothing is dead. It's
Yeah.
just that everything is cyclical and content
Mm.
won't die. The formats are going to change. So I'm
Yeah.
trying to immerse myself in as many
Different formats as well.
formats as
Mm.
possible. So
Good.
yes,
That's nice to
fingers
know.
crossed.
Good, good. Good luck with that. So, would you like to read something from your book?
Absolutely, always ready. And there's no better place to do Sri Ganesh than the first chapter itself, because
Yes.
that kind of sets the tone.
Mm-hmm.
Incidentally, this once I didn't get in trouble with my acknowledgements, because I finally
Okay.
wrote an acknowledgement. No, I wrote a dedication to my husband, fourth book. He said I waited long enough. He said I've got a
Oh
too
my
large
God.
a family to come to you. So yeah. Okay. So I'll, depending on how much time we have, I'll either read both the pages, or I'll read one of the pages. Tell me, Rashi,
Yeah,
approximately
it's
how
fine.
much
Yeah,
time
one
we
page is
have.
good.
Okay. So I'll start in the middle of the chapter. This is
Mm-hmm.
basically where this old man, who's again has a penchant for prophesizing, is sitting around a fire,
Mm-hmm.
and the Kuldhara ruins are somewhere in the back, and he's sitting huddled around the fire with four other villagers.
Okay.
The old man stroked his long white beard, continuing to look into the distance where a bleak outline of a ghost town was visible. No moon, no stars, and a cloudy night, yet it stared back, defined by an eerie glow that blurred the details and rendered it almost monster like, shapeless, amorphous, but vigilant. Baba, is it them? Are they angry? Are we in trouble? The devotee who had lost his goats inquired with folded hands. The old man shook his head. I can't say, Daulatram, but I sense that they are restless. It has been quiet for a while. Ever since the last disappearance, another man said. Little Chameli left for school unescorted and happened to wander into the ruins and never returned. The last man who had held his silence all this while spoke up. Others are afraid to say it, but I am not. Why fight our destiny? Those ruins are cursed and so are we. If Bhutari Baba thinks some danger is coming, I believe him. Let's warn everyone. No, the old man said. Not yet. I shall try and speak with the spirits first. Daulat Ram pulled at the chillum, wondering what direct or trunk calling system the mysterious Baba had with the possessed. And if he was such an accomplished tantric, why were his eyes so full of fear and foreboding? That's when an invisible hand tugged at his turban and flung it into the darkness. Without waiting for his companions or any residual spine chilling prophecies, Daulat Ram ran screaming into the night, faster than any of his absconding goats.
That's really
That's how it
interesting.
starts
I'm
off.
sure people will grab this book immediately after hearing your excerpt now. And now we'll actually give a question to the audience that Richa has come up with a few books, and we have also discussed all the books here. So you have to name any of her books in the comments below, and if it's the correct answer, you will definitely stand a chance to win the mega prizes at the end of the season. So thank you so much, Richa. Wish you good luck with
Oh
all
wow,
the projects.
this reminds me of one of the thank you so much. This reminds me of, being that attentive student in class, and I would be really scratching my head thinking, oh my God, I hope I remember something. But yeah, I hope whoever gets it, all the best.
Yes, definitely. And good luck to you too. And it was lovely talking to you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah.